All right, welcome everyone to this webinar. Thank you very much for joining us today to learn about how to choose the best school breakfast models for your school or school district. So thanks everyone for being here with us today. Just to start with some introductions, I am Natasha Smith, the new Director of Child Nutrition here at Project Bread, leading the CNOP team, Child Nutrition Outreach Program team. Here with us also today is Rosemary Kayward, our Senior Outreach Coordinator. And also we're very lucky to have joining us Joanne Lennon, School Nutrition Director at Chicopee Public Schools, who will be joining us later is here on the call now, but will be speaking later on the call about implementation strategies. All right, so today we will be covering best practices and things to keep in mind as you plan for an alternative breakfast model at your school or school district. Rosemary will be talking to us about the successes and challenges of breakfast in the classroom, grab and go, and second chance breakfast to help you decide what makes the most sense for your school or district. Following that, we'll be hearing from Joanne about her experience implementing breakfast after the bell programs in Chicopee. And we'll finish up by talking about what comes next for schools that are interested in implementing alternative breakfast models. And finally, at the end, we'll have an opportunity to answer your questions. So please feel free to send questions throughout this webinar by email to cnop@projectbread.org or through the chat feature on the webinar. All right, so the Child Nutrition Outreach Program at Project Bread partners with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education to provide technical assistance for schools that are looking to implement or expand alternative breakfast models across the state. And there are many different services that we provide, and many of them will be discussed here in this webinar. But in addition, we also provide one-on-one consults for districts, helping with financial planning for new breakfast models, trainings, promotional materials, and much more, as you can see by the list here on this slide. And we are working to make your district's transition as smooth as possible and provide personal assistance to help address any challenges along the way. So we have many different resources available to help with implementing breakfast after the bell. About 2 weeks ago, your districts should have received a variety of resources, which included the 3 quick guides on this slide, which will reiterate much of the information that we will discuss today about each specific breakfast model. Also included should have been the School of Breakfast Program Integrity Guidebook, explaining procedures for receiving reimbursement for school breakfast. Also a list of funding opportunities to help breakfast programs take off, a list of technical assistance that CNOP provides, and an email listing online resources, which are all also available at our website, meals4kids.org/resources. So you can always go there to find out more. And all of these resources will be linked in the webinar slides, which we'll be sure to send out later. So you can look back at this slide and access these resources at any time. All right, so now it's time we're really going to launch into the meat of this webinar. So Senior Outreach Coordinator Rosemary will take over to discuss the different alternative breakfast models available to your schools and districts.
Okay, great. Thank you, Natasha. Good afternoon, all. Glad you could join us this afternoon. As Natasha said, I am the Senior Outreach Coordinator for the CNOP team. I focus on the Central and Western Mass area. During this section, I will review each of the school breakfast models, including strengths, where it works best, considerations for implementation. My goal is to provide you with guidelines for choosing a model for your school. But first, let's look at the traditional school breakfast in the cafeteria and why participation rates are low. Mornings are chaotic and tough for students and parents alike. I love this picture because it captures what most mornings look like and feel. It's enough just to get kids dressed and ready for school without making sure they have a nutritious breakfast before leaving the house. Students' morning routine when they arrive at school can also present barriers to getting breakfast before they need to go be in class. Between arrival time, location of the cafeteria, and social distractions, getting to the cafeteria is a challenge for many students. There is also stigma attached to going to the cafeteria to receive breakfast, as well as intimidation in the cafeteria with possible bullying, and some students don't feel hungry first thing in the morning. So the solution is to move breakfast out of the cafeteria for easier access and make breakfast part of the school day. Most schools have a high participation in lunch because it is part of the school day and part of the daily routine of students, a captive audience. These alternative breakfast models can provide access to breakfast before and after the instructional bell rings, removing many barriers that are experienced with breakfast in the cafeteria. These breakfast models have been proven to increase participation. Breakfast in the classroom, grab and go, and second chance. These numbers on the screen are the estimated participation that these breakfast models achieve. For some schools, the increase will happen overnight, especially for those that are participating in Universal Breakfast Program. For other schools, the increase might be more gradual as you adjust the menu and promote the program. The participation is also related to the percentage of free and reduced price eligibility. If you have a school with low free and reduced percentages, you will not see the same increase of participation as at a school with a high free and reduced eligibility. Okay, so let's dive into each model a little deeper. These three models can be tailored to fit the needs of your school. There is not one way to implement them. They can be combined, or the delivery and equipment can be different. As you listen to the basics of each model, I encourage you to know aspects of each that you think will work and build your program from there, like a grab and go to the classroom program or a second chance breakfast in the classroom. Okay, so breakfast in the classroom. The basic definition is that breakfast is offered or served in the classroom and eaten in the classroom. Usually within the classroom time after the instructional bell rings. It's about 15 minutes before breakfast is wrapped up and the rest of the day starts. So how it works. For prep, cafeteria staff prep breakfast items in the cafeteria or kitchen. The prep can happen the morning of or the day before, depending on your staff and the items in the breakfast. All reimbursable meal components are packed in coolers or crates. And depending on if your school is offer or serve, each of the components can be packed up in a bag to quick grab, or you can allow the students to individually select the items for offer. For execution and distribution and delivery, the breakfast items are delivered to the classroom by either food service staff, students, or paraprofessionals. And for record keeping, teachers or paraprofessionals track the number of students that participate in the school breakfast program each morning and send that information back to the cafeteria. Students are not allowed to complete the point of service. And lastly, the last step is cleanup. Students clean up in their designated area and remove breakfast trash from the classroom so that the custodians and janitors can take it from there. So let's talk about the different strengths and where this program works best. Breakfast in the classroom absolutely removes all barriers for students getting breakfast because it's after the instructional bell, it's in the classroom, it's part of the school day. So that's why we see the highest participation rates. The lessons and instructional time can still be counted and including while kids are eating, and with the teacher facilitating some kind of interactive activity or giving them one that can happen individually at their desk. This also allows for classroom bonding for students. The time of them sitting at their desk quietly eating and talking with their classmates really allows that social bonding experience between the students. And it also decreases stigma because it normalizes the program. It's what everybody does in the morning. So there's no like distinguishing between who needs it and who doesn't. It's just like what everybody does. It becomes part of the culture of the school. And because of that, also because they start with, you know, a relaxed time of eating breakfast, students also have commented that they also feel like the school really cares about their well-being. So where does this program work best? This program works best where students really do not have time to get breakfast before the instructional bell rings. This could be because, you know, they need to wait on the bus before being inside the building. They arrive late. Buses are normally scheduled to arrive just a few minutes before the bell rings. So there's just like no way for the students to get in the building with, you know, 15 minutes before the instructional bell rings. Also where students enter many different locations. You know, if a student enters the building on the opposite side of the cafeteria, it's hard for them to get to the classroom. And also it's hard to funnel kids to one space, to one point where they would receive breakfast. So if that's a condition at your school, breakfast in the classroom might be a really great model for you. It also is a great option for the younger kids. You know, sometimes if you provide them too many options, if they get confused or it didn't take a long time to make a decision. And it's also hard to carry those components to the classroom or wherever they're going. So having them receive breakfast while they're sitting down in the classroom is really helpful. And also, if there's no space for like a grab-and-go kiosk, breakfast in the classroom is a great program for that. Okay, so some considerations in thinking about the implementation. Breakfast in the classroom amongst the 3 different models does require the biggest change in the morning routine. It's really important to get buy-in, to plan with stakeholders, and have a really strong communication plan so that the janitors and the custodians, teachers, principals all know how this is going to change their routine and it works for their responsibilities. This is also going to add new tasks for teachers, and there is a lot of pushback and fear of, you know, teachers having to do something more. However, if you plan with them and streamline the process, it eases the burden on the teachers to complete the point of service and also ensure the kids are taking the right components. Most teachers, after experience this program in their classroom, they find that it actually saves them time because it reduces behavior issues and the students are more attentive. It helps to calm them down. So it reduces that time that teachers are using to address behavioral issues. Food is also in new places, so it's really important to put together a cleaning plan and cleaning kits, like one in the classroom where the trash cans are going to be and like inside and outside the classroom, as well as when the custodian is going to come and pick up the waste and the trash. The point of service, again, just to add, say a little bit more about that, happens in the cafeteria and in the classroom, excuse me. So in implementing this program, definitely need to build in time and allow for training of the teachers and professionals so they understand the regulations and the requirements of the point of service that they will be responsible for in the classroom. And a couple other things, storage capacity. Implementing this program requires new equipment and potentially more food that you'll have to have on hand as participation increases. So just keeping that in mind is where this extra equipment and food might be stored. And then most schools do start with a cold menu and introduce hot items as the program, as the food service staff and the school is ready to add hot items in. So you want to keep in mind what kind of equipment will help you keep the food at the right temperatures, which isn't that long if the delivery and the pickup time happens in a short window. Okay, so moving on to the next one, Grab and Go. I think that the name of this program is very descriptive. Breakfast is offered or served from one or more central locations via carts or kiosks, and usually placed in a high traffic area where students can grab the breakfast and eat in the classroom or other places that food is allowed. In general, how it works. The cafeteria staff, food service staff, prep the breakfast items in the kiosk. Some of it can be prepped the day before and finished the morning of. And then depending on the location and what makes sense for where the cart is stored and then where it is set up, the food service staff will wheel it out to a location, and the record keeping happens at the kiosk via a wireless device or computer system. And depending on if you are offering a universal free breakfast, there's other options for recording the point of service, whether possibly a clicker. And then for cleanup, trash cans should be scattered around wherever food can be eaten, and students should be instructed to be responsible for the waste and to be encouraged and disciplined to throw it away in the proper place. So strengths and where Grab and Go works best. The strength of this program is it's very convenient. It's quick and easy for students to go through the line and pick up their breakfast. There's also a lot of flexibility in location, service time, and food selection. So schools have a lot of choice when they implement this program. It keeps the point of service in the hands of the food service department, so it's not as disruptive to the teacher's morning routine. It's also trendy. Students have a lot of choices out there, on their way to school, and having, a flashy grab and go that's similar to what they might experience outside of the school, makes it attractive to them. This program can also be offered before and after the instructional bell. So this program works really well with older grade levels, possibly middle schools and high schools, where kids make decisions fast and move fast. Also where there is a large space where kids are allowed to congregate and high traffic areas. Also, when kids are entering one or more locations, if they enter several different locations, it's hard. You'd have to supply the kiosk in several different locations or try to funnel them down to one location. Also, where the layout of the building, whether it's a couple stories or there's ramps, elevators, a grab and go might be better for that because it's easier than delivering the coolers to the classroom with all different level tiers. Also, grab and go is a good choice if you have a large student body, a large enrollment, because that means with other programs like a breakfast in the classroom, it might be difficult to deliver all the coolers to every single classroom before the instructional bell rings. Okay, so considerations for implementation. To maximize the ability for kids to eat breakfast in the time that they are given, Flexibility of where they eat is really important. So if you do a grab and go and they're not allowed to eat in the classroom, but they don't have time to eat it elsewhere, that's going to kind of be a deterrent for them to pick up breakfast before they go to the classroom. And then with equipment needs, choosing one that's functional and trendy that draws kids to the cart. But you also want to make it functional so that it's easy to wheel out and use every day. And thinking about what equipment you need for hot and cold items. And again, just in one of the other models, you'll have food in new places. So taking care to plan cleaning and how this might affect the custodian schedule. And branding. Branding for grab-and-go programs is a really good idea to draw attention to the program and give it an image and a label that kids can identify to. Okay, so the last model is a second chance model. And this is kind of a combination of both breakfast in the classroom and a grab-and-go model, and potentially a cafeteria as well. So breakfast is served usually between the first and second periods during a mid-morning break, like a flex time. The program can be served from a grab-and-go to the classroom, or grab and go to another space, just a grab and go in general, at multiple locations throughout the building, or from the cafeteria in like a grab and go fashion, or if there's enough time for them to sit down in the cafeteria during that flex time, that works as well. So the prep time for second chance is very much like a traditional cafeteria model. A little bit later in the morning. And for record keeping, the point of sales is kept with the food service staff and done very much like cafeteria, unless it's served at a grab-and-go kiosk, and then it'd be like a grab-and-go model. And then for the cleanup is again like a grab-and-go model or the traditional cafeteria model. So strengths of the second chance model. This model really caters to students who are not hungry first thing in the morning. So it gives them a chance to eat later in the day when they are feeling hungry. It also allows more independence for older students to choose like when and where they're going to eat. It also is part of the school day later after the instructional bell, and offers flexibility of where breakfast is served at a grab-and-go kiosk or in the cafeteria. If it is served in the cafeteria, there's also broader menu options. So where it works best. The critical part for a second chance is having enough time after the first period or a passing time, a flex time, for kids to get out of the classroom and get down to wherever you're serving the breakfast. As well as if a school doesn't have the option of buying additional equipment or no space, second chance is a good model for those schools as well. Okay, so considerations for implementation. You definitely want to make sure that there is enough time for students to leave the classroom, get breakfast, and then get back to where they need to be. As well as, again, flexibility of where students eat, giving them options of eating not just the cafeteria or in the hallway, but in the classroom as well. And similar to the other models, you're going to have food in new places, so timing for that. And with second chance, it can sometimes come close to lunch, so making sure there's enough time between the second chance and when the first lunch occurs, so that students want to eat lunch as well and it doesn't interfere with that timing. Okay, so those are the 3 breakfast models. Just want to leave you with a few tips for implementation strategies. As you're thinking about that and which model is going to make sense, I encourage you to assemble a breakfast team of stakeholders that include teachers, principals, possibly a wellness coordinator, or custodians, so that you can include them in the planning and include them in, like, why the change is happening, how it will affect their morning routine, why increasing participation in school breakfast is important, and here giving them an opportunity to share their concerns as well with you. Time for equipment. If you need to purchase different items, allowing enough time for those items to arrive before you start the program. Parent and student outreach is critical so that parents know about what is offered at the school and students are aware of the change, and communicating that out, encouraging them to take advantage of it. So this includes the start time, the start date, the menu that will be offered, and if it's a universal breakfast program. Also with maintenance, after you roll out the program, there might be new observations or things that occur that you just, you couldn't plan for or anticipate. So it's keeping flexible and adapting as after the program is implemented in real time and responding to the different behaviors of the students, and as well as maybe challenges that come up for teachers or custodians. Okay, now I am going to turn it over to Joanne Lennon. We are very thankful that she is able to join us and present about her experience today. Joanne has worked in as a food service director for 33 years in Vernon, Connecticut, and Chicopee, Massachusetts. She has been very active in the State School Nutrition Association, attended many conferences, and keeps up to date with new programs and food trends. She is very passionate about locally grown programs. 20% of her food budget is spent on a wide variety of local foods. The school district has 8,000 students and an average daily participation for 15 schools of 82% for lunch and 53% for breakfast. She also has a senior meal program and power snack at the secondary schools. Thank you so much for joining us, Joanne. Joanne, can you hear us? Hello? Joanne? Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead. Joanne, you can go ahead and start.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Joanne, we can hear you. Go ahead, please.
Now, somehow my microphone was not working,
Okay.
so I had to call in. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Thank
Okay,
you.
good. Can you go on to the next slide, Rosemarie?
Yep.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm really glad to be here to kind of share what we do in Chicopee about breakfast in the classroom. And I do have two different models, but before I start, I'd just like to give you a little background about our district. And as you can see on the slide, we have about 7,500 students enrolled. 58% are directly certified. We do have district-wide CEP, which makes, free meals for lunch and breakfast available. All our kitchens are self-op, and there are 15 of them. And I know, Rosemarie, I had told you we have breakfast, lunch, supper, and senior meals. We do serve 6,000 lunches a day, 3,800 breakfasts a day. Our budget's $5 million, and Rosemarie was right on target with our local food budget on local foods. So there we are in a nutshell. So next, Rosemarie, I guess. So this is our first model, everyone. We started this about 4 years ago in one school at Stefanik, and it's the bag delivery program. And as you can see, we have the bags all set up against the cafeteria wall. This happens to be Fairview School, and each bag is associated with the classroom number. So they come back to the same place every day. They're loaded up every day and sent back to that classroom with, that's the breakfast that was particularly on that day when we took the picture. They are brought up by students every day at this particular school. Sometimes they're brought up by the food service staff. It does range on who does and who doesn't take it up. If you notice on the bag, there's a white tally sheet that's stuck in by 212, 214, and that's the student roster sheet that we use or the teacher uses to check off who ate that day and who was absent. And then it's sent back down every day with a total number, and that number is put into the point of sale at the end of the day. So all the bags in this particular system have to contain all four components. You can't do offer versus serve because you have to send it all in the classroom, and the student really doesn't have any choices. So that's our bag delivery system. So next. So this is our kiosk model. Well, before I go on to that, we did start out with one school, and that was Stefanik. And then we had two other schools, or actually three other schools that did do the bag program before we started this kiosk model last year. So this kiosk model is a cart that can be rolled around on different floors in the school district. So this happens to be at Bowie School, and we have a kiosk on the first floor and the second floor. So we can handle classrooms on each floor. Each kiosk has a number of grain items, some hot food items, milk, juice, fruit. And we always try to offer yogurt, basically, I would say almost every day. Some schools do offer chocolate milk, but most of the schools only offer white. It makes it easier for the children to make their selection. But as you can see, compared to the bag model, there's a lot more variety. And because it is offer versus serve, they only need to put 3 out of the 4 items into the bag. You don't see a student here going through it. We do provide them with those little brown lunch bags, and they make their choices. And there is somebody at the cart daily to make sure all 3 components do go into the bag. each rack, or this is a Cambro kiosk, has behind it, you can't see it, but underneath those components, there is a picture of students and a list of students that have food allergies, so they can lift it up and check on which students can't have a particular item. So we do provide a list at each kiosk. It's not as good as going through a computerized system, but it definitely helps with any allergies that the students might have. Next, yeah, very good. So we started at Stefanik, like I said, and that particular school had 90% free and reduced meals. And she was really interested in having breakfast because she found that, you know, a lot of the kids were tardy, they were not paying attention. She was having, you know, lots of kids going down to the nurse's office. So she said, you know, what if we try this? And I had mentioned it quite a few times, but she got on board, and she found that once she started it, there were less trips to the nurse's office. Their MCAS scores actually did go up. We don't know if it was from breakfast, but 2 years later, even with a school that was that high free and reduced, they were fives. It reduced the absentees. The classrooms were definitely quieter. When I went around and talked to the teachers, they said, oh, we should have done this years ago. Less trouble before school, because lots of times they used the school as a babysitter, and kids would get in trouble, and there was nobody out there monitoring them. So now they come in at a specific time, and they have to go right into school. And, of course, the best thing is that they're not hungry and they're ready to learn. So once she started talking about it at the admin meetings, other schools and their principals were very interested, especially since the MCAS scores went up, and found out there was less problems and issues at school. So 3 others started the next year. Anyway, next. Oh, this is our video. And I think we have to press play. Or can you do that, Rosemary? Can you click it on? There you go. So this Stefanik school did a video on how it works. Oh, there's no sound. Oh, I can't hear any sound. Oh, maybe they can. You can go to next. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yep, we can hear you, Joanna.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Now you'll notice in that video that the students were checking off their names. We no longer do that anymore. I just wanted to make sure that was clear with everyone. But when you implement any one of these programs, the best thing to do is make sure that you communicate to everyone. The superintendent, the director of maintenance, the fire marshal, your custodians are huge key players in this program. So when they have staff meetings, they invite everyone to come to these meetings. I've gone and toured the schools with the fire marshal to make sure that the kiosk or the bags or the milk coolers that we place on the second floor are not in the way or a hazard to, a fire drill, or we make sure that there's enough the custodians walk around with me and make sure there's enough barrels outside the classrooms that are on wheels that can be wheeled around. We send lots of letters home to parents and guardians and let them know that we're starting on this day and this is the time and what the child could expect to have to eat. And it happens before they leave school in June, then it happens again in August. They do Connect Ed telephone calls to the parents so they're fully aware. It's even been in the paper. So you just want to make sure that you say it over and over and over again. I can't tell you how important it is. The custodians can make or break your program, so make sure you definitely include them. And we did strongly support them by buying the extra cans and the stronger trash bags. Next slide. And each one has its own successes and challenges. With a kiosk, we find that we have less waste because it is an offer versus serve program. You don't have to send all 4 components up to the classroom. I know we do have share tables in the classrooms that do have the bag program, but that doesn't mean that it's necessarily eaten. Some of it gets thrown away. Some of it goes bad. Not everything gets brought back downstairs. So they're both good, but you do have that option, and it's a lot less waste. The kiosk is definitely more convenient. The kids go right into school, go into their classroom, come out with their teacher, go to the kiosk, get their food, and go sit back down. It's not as hard as having the kids it's not so hard with the delivery system. The kids are definitely easy on both ends, but they do have more of a choice. I think the accountability is extremely more accurate with the kiosk because it isn't counted by students or teachers. It's actually counted by my food service staff who have years of experience of knowing that, an auditor could walk in. We did have an audit for our first 2-3 years ago, and one of the problems was that breakfast in the classroom was a problem because teachers just didn't know what constituted a breakfast. And they did ask them. They asked every single one of my teachers what it was, and not all of them could answer even though they were trained. Some of the challenges, the bag delivery, like I said, with potential waste, it is questionable on accountability. The kiosk, on that challenge, you need extra equipment. You do need a fridge and a kiosk on every floor. But the kiosk isn't very expensive because I buy the Cambro one, and it's not a designer one. It's definitely a movable, workable one, and I really do like that particular model. And one of the schools had quite a few kids on the second floor. We were actually able to put a second kiosk on that floor to address all the extra students. The challenge with that is the kiosk is a little too advanced for our kindergarten, so they still receive lunch in their classroom. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yep, Joanne, we can hear you. Go ahead.
It said that you lose some of my speaking? I'm not sure where I left off. It looked like I was unconnected.
Nope, you left off with the kindergarten.
Okay, all right, because a couple things popped up on my screen. All right, that's good. So that both models, any leftover food in the classroom is potentially time and temperature abuse. That's one of the challenges with that, so you have to be very careful and really train your staff. Hot breakfast is a little more difficult because it takes longer to prepare, and to get it ready that early to send it up in the classroom can be difficult. We do have increased labor hours that are 2 to 4 hours a day, not really a challenge. My staff liking getting the extra time, and it really doesn't cost any more money because I do get the reimbursement. It's just that you have to have staff willing to do it. And because you have that extra staff, you have to have them very much trained in accountability. So I guess next slide. So these are the tips that, if anybody else is thinking of doing this program, definitely find the best principal or advocate to start up the program, because if you do, she just talks about it all the time, and it's really easily driven if it's successful. Make sure you communicate with everyone. More and more is better. Go to visit another school before you start your program so you can actually see it in operation, which we did on a few times. One of the things that we started doing is using reusable bags to reduce the paper waste, and the principal at that particular school bought them. It was great. They're working out really well. I think that if I had to make a choice over again, I would go with the kiosk model, because I think the accountability is definitely easier to do on that particular model. Make sure you have plenty of signage. Make sure you train your food service workers. Make sure they are doing the production records and on a regular basis. And one last thing that's really nice, and we do this maybe 3 or 4 times a year, is that, I know the teachers sometimes think this is extra work for them, but we've given them incentives to help out, and they have certainly benefited from them, but they really appreciate it too. So we've had pizza party and soup and sandwiches with them, and maybe about 4 times a year. So they've bought into the program too, and it's gone really, really well. All my elementary schools, the 7 schools that have breakfast in the classroom, are over 90%, which makes my breakfast participation 53% in school-wide, district-wide. And I guess that's all I can add. If anybody has any questions, feel free to ask me. Oh, last time, you can look at the slide. It's kind of nice. This is what happened when we first started BIC. As you can see, it's a dramatic increase in 4 years. So it definitely works. It's a really good program. So I guess now I'm done. Sorry about that.
That was great, Joanne. Thank you so much for putting the presentation together and sharing from your experience. A lot of great practices with the Grab and Go to the Classroom program and Breakfast in the Classroom program. Now I'm going to turn it over to Natasha to continue.
All right. So, thank you so much, Joanne. That was wonderful. And what's next? We hope that some of you on the call are considering alternative breakfast models. They do make a huge difference, and indeed making the switch can seem daunting, requiring new staff, new equipment, working with parents, teachers, and stakeholders across schools. But we want to let you all know that the CNOP program is available to help districts do that transition, making it easier for you and helping you succeed in bringing breakfast to more children in your schools. So feel free to reach out to us at the Child Nutrition Outreach Program. The contact information for us will be on the next slide. And if you do reach out to us, we have outreach coordinators that will take you step by step through the process and help you pick the model that is going to benefit your district the most and makes the most sense for you. So you can also sign up for our e-newsletter, Fresh Focus, where that will provide you with school breakfast news, grant ideas and new grant opportunities, various events related to school breakfast throughout the year, and recipes and ongoing menu ideas. And at our website, mealsforkids.org, feel free to check out all of our online resources, including all of the copies of breakfast materials that were sent out to you, templates of letters to send to parents, various outreach materials to send out, sample meal count rosters, funding opportunities, and tips for applying to grants. And we do have some exciting new breakfast grants available through CNOP at Project Red. They include a grant focusing on healthy school breakfast options, a Breakfast for All grant, which focuses on CEP and Provision 2 and using those for breakfast programs, and a Breakfast After the Bell Award grant for folks who have already implemented this and are doing well in Breakfast After the Bell. So we would love for you to apply to one of our grants. And now we will turn it over for some questions. What we're going to do here is unmute everybody so that folks can answer questions. And if you do not have questions, if you could mute yourself so that we don't get feedback on the line, that would be great. But if you have questions for either the CNOP staff or for Joanne, feel free to chime in now. We will also check the chat line here to see if anyone has written a question in. Don't be shy. Feel free to call out your questions. All right, well, one we have for, sorry, was that someone on the line? I guess not. Okay. One question we do have for Joanne. If you're still there, Joanne, in retrospect, are there any other breakfast models that you wish you had considered for your district before deciding to implement the ones that you did?
No, those were the two that were, well, actually, there was only the bag program that was available through EOS in the breakfast program grant in Massachusetts. And at that point, they were only offering the grant with the bag program. So I just stumbled on the kiosk model in Connecticut, Hartford, Connecticut. And I wish both of them were available when I first started, but no, I would, and if I had to pick the model, I would pick kiosk for sure, if I had to pick one.
Great. Thanks. Anyone else on the line have questions for Joanne or our staff here at CNOP?
I have a question.
Hello? Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Raymond, and I work for a Catholic school, and we only have 51% of our kids who receive free and reduced breakfast and lunch. How can we implement breakfast in the classroom without losing money?
Okay, so if you have breakfast in the classroom with 51% free and reduced,
yeah,
you because we have CEP, but universal breakfast would cover, well, you get a lot of free, well, maybe Rosemary can answer that question better than I.
Hello, this is Rosemary. Thank you for your question. So if I can understand you correctly, you're asking how you can implement breakfast in the classroom without incurring any extra costs and to break even. Is that what your question is?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, great. Well, and you're 51% free and reduced?
Yes, 51%.
Okay, great. So there are grants available from us and for partner organizations. One of them is New England Dairy and Action for Healthy Kids, who have grants available to help purchase the equipment that you need to implement. And as far as, so that's kind of cover upfront implementation costs. As far as ongoing costs, more than likely your participation will increase, bringing in more revenue to help pay for any increased labor costs of staff to run the program, and of course the increase in food costs. So more than likely your program will actually be more sustainable if in implementing the Breakfast in the Classroom program, your participation does increase, which we have absolutely seen with programs who implement that, it may be a gradual increase, so that's something to keep in mind. But we would love to talk to you a little bit further and learn more about your situation there, so I encourage you to note down. My email is there on the screen, and phone number. Feel free to reach out to us so that we can talk more in detail about your particular situation.
Okay.
And
Thank
if
you
I
so
could
much.
add something on that, I went blank for a minute there because I said, oh my God, all my elementary schools were 80-90% free or reduced. So I said, how do I answer that question? But what I would do if I were you is that, say for example, if you did a model, like a mock model on your spreadsheet, and said, okay, the reimbursement for breakfast is blah, 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 and I get 50% of those. And most of the students that will be free will take it. And you put down your reimbursement, what you think you'll get from all your free breakfast. And then also say, maybe if I go up 20% and I have another 50 kids that are going to, they're only going to get the paid or reduced model, you would build that in and see what the total revenue would be for that school, and see if that will cover the cost of your food and labor. I would definitely do it out on a spreadsheet.
Yeah. That's great, Joanne. And just to add to that, we do have a calculator here at that we can run those numbers for you and do that analysis for you.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, no problem. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for your question.
No problem.
All right, any other burning questions on the line before we wrap this up? We have time for about one more question. All right, well, in that case, I think we will end the webinar. Once again, thank you everyone for tuning in and participating. And you now have all of our contact information, so feel free to reach out at any time if you're interested in learning more about any of these models and in CNOP's help in implementing any of it. So thank you all very much and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.